I have one question. If the Horizon system currently has a request a book process, if I remember right. Does the refresh my memory? Does the patron have to know the name of the product, the ISN, to make the request? How do they know that media exists to make the request? Do they feed it from Amazon into the local system?
No, they can say, I want a black book with a red cover. And
then you go, and then does Horizon look for it, or the local librarian? I don't remember how the request process works. Where I'm going is, if we already have a process in place for a patron to request a book that the library doesn't have. How does that work?
But it's different in that case, I'm saying I want blue book with black letters for Ed to read, and then the library can decide to buy it or not.
And Mary Kay looks at it and says, we can provide that.
And Mary Kay goes, well, that's a terrible book, we're not buying it.
Okay, I was wondering if we already had the interface coming from Amazon for this material that already didn't exist.
It's just me saying I want this title. And then, whereas what Mary Kay's saying is that I want this book so badly, I'm buying it and I'm giving it to my library. Or the buy it thing is, I want this book so bad, I want it now. So I'm going to buy it and give you some money so I can have that immediacy of my purchase.
Have you read these recent articles too about the millennials not wanting junk in the home?
Right.
Not wanting appearance junk and not wanting junk.
Me?
I'm one of them.
Yeah.
So am I.
Yeah.
You buy it, get rid of it.
Your lounge chair, you have your bed, and you have a lamp.
Right.
Washington Post has got a call. I'll find it. Fascinating.
What are some of the other, Alice, Michelle, Charlie, what do you?
I'm interested in hearing more about it. I likely would be one to opt out, I'm guessing, but I still would like to know what kind of features and what it would take to implement it.
I know that when I can't find a book from the vendor, I usually choose I don't know many other places. I'll look at Amazon, but certainly not for a book that's out of print. I won't get it from there. I won't do it. I think I have too many charges. That's my advice to people that want to buy a book.
You know, just hearing some of the discussion, I think it's a topic that people are interested in engaging in. So I would entertain a motion if you feel it's appropriate to explore this option further. And if you don't feel that way, don't make the motion and we'll just let it die. I have a movement. Do I have a second? Okay, you've heard the motion and the second. The question is on the adoption of the motion to further explore buy it now. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Thanks, sir. We will move on in the agenda to local request status. Donovan?
Actually, we've made a last-minute change on that. That was supposed to be Cheryl.
Okay. Local request status. Cheryl?
Okay. So this is continuing our ongoing cleanup efforts. We've done several of these in the last few meetings. So the beginning of this document, if you haven't read it, is mainly just going through and explaining what local request is. So for the benefit of those of you who don't work with iTypes every day, I'll just give a brief background here. So local request, or we pretty much call it LR, you'll hear people call it LR, is an iType. iTypes in Horizon control circulation policies. Local request iTypes, LR iTypes, limit your ability to request an item based on your location and the item's location. So if I am a Stewartville patron, I can only request LR Stewartville materials. I can't request Owatonna's LR materials, only Stewartville's LR materials. The idea is that you keep these LR materials in your library, on your shelves, so they're more readily and quickly available to the tax base which is paying for them. But it is meant to be a temporary status The committee decided way back in 2004, I think, I dug through all the notes on the S drive, and that was the first reference I found to it.
It was shortly after we went live.
Yep. So in 2004, they said it will be no more than 180 days that something remains LR, and then it is supposed to roll over to an OV or another I type, but in general, they roll over to an OV. OV means anybody can request it. So after 180 days, it's supposed to roll over so that then it becomes available to the entire region and not just the local library. For years and years, probably going back to 2004, 2005, we have sent out a report once a quarter that says here are the non-compliant LR materials. So these are the materials that are not rolling over, but should be rolling over to something. And something isn't set up correctly, so either you have inputted, you've had this data entry error and added the wrong I type, or you've never set up the table that controls that rollover. Okay, so one of those two things have happened, and we send out the report, and then we trust that you're going to go through it, and you're going to look at the report, and you're going to clean up your stuff. So what we've discovered, looking at the last few reports, is that roughly half of the things on one report to the next don't ever get touched. People are just ignoring them. So these things are pretty much staying LR indefinitely. They are never becoming available to the entire patron base at SELCO, and I have a proposal here of how to clean those up. So do we want to clean those up? If so, do we want to do this? Do we have something else in mind? Basically, the proposal is if you haven't cleaned it up by the time the next report comes out, I'm switching it over from LR to NR. So from local request to non-requestable. We talked about non-requestable instead of OV because it encourages you to still go and do the work and still look up the items and clean up your stuff and be aware of what's in your collection that hasn't been cleaned up.
Would there be a reason for going past 180 days?
There is one exception that the committee decided a long time ago to allow, and that is acquisitions material, because usually the time it takes from you to order it to when it comes is longer than that 180-day period. So that is the one exception. This is not what I'm proposing, the cleanup.
What we have now is not automatic.
Who has to look at that report? Okay. Somebody has to look at that report because it should be automatic, but because something isn't jiving, the code's wrong or your LR table isn't set up correctly, it's not happening automatic.
Are we talking thousands, tens of thousands, items-wise?
I think I put the numbers on there. So, okay, so I put the lines on the report. And I'd have to pull up the report, but I think when I looked at it, it was several hundred. We're not talking thousands. We're talking hundreds.
Okay.
So
the intent is that the library really was wanting its stuff to conform with regional policy.
Right.
And that I put a space where I wasn't supposed to, or a comma where I wasn't supposed to, and therefore the server is so smart that it knows it knows not to touch my mistake.
Right, because it doesn't fit with the table. Right. So
I like this a lot. I think it's necessary.
Well, thank you, Jane. You should get dinner tonight, though.
But I would actually like to argue in favor of an OV I type, and I'll maybe explain why. I feel that if you put it in an R, you're somewhat punishing the patrons because then they can't request it. And you're also at the same time punishing the libraries that do this work correctly, because then they're having to fill ILL requests because you didn't do your job. And so it's creating, I guess, extra work for other libraries in some sense. I mean, we're not talking about a large volume of material here. And then at the same time, you're also giving a negative interaction with that library's patrons, which I feel, I guess, philosophically, I'm somewhat against. So what I was thinking, what if you created a special OV, let's just say it's called OV0, something like that, where you could still, then you could do an exception based on that OV, so at that location. So let's say if the item is OV0 at Zumbrota, it does one like checkout period, like maybe you could do a limited checkout period of 5 days or something. So if something's not right, but if the item, if it's OV0 and the item location is not Zumbrota, then it would follow the normal loan period at that location.
I know what you're saying.
So are we talking about 221 out of our,
That's
all of our?
Yeah.
How many lines on the report?
Oh.
So there might be like 5 things in one line, or there might be 50. There's a couple lines that have a couple hundred. So we are talking, as far as an item count goes, I think it's under 1,000 items, but I'd have to double check the last report. Per quarter.
But this is cumulative amount.
Well, yeah, I mean, half of it is cumulative, right? Because half of it is getting changed from one quarter to the other, and then half of it's not, roughly half. So,
Cheryl,
yeah.
you were talking about that you have certain libraries that are disregarding, or are they the same ones over and over?
Sometimes, but not always. So sometimes it's clear. You can look at the report. I mean, you guys have these reports. If you dug through your email, you could probably find them. There are some locations that clearly don't have an understanding of what LR is, and they've never asked. And then there's some places where maybe they just got busy for 6 months, or 2 quarters, or 3 quarters, or forgot about it, or something. So it fluctuates. There are some people on there that are on there pretty much, you know, the report's going to be run and that library is going to be on there. But there are some that I'll see and go, oh, that's surprising. So
I mean, I can understand you have exceptions, but I was just thinking if there's somebody that's continually on there, then
there are a couple libraries like that, but it isn't just that. So
I can see going both ways on it, but the OB to me has some issues because that is your checkout period and it is attached to maximum fines. And if that stuff is going out interlibrary loan then that's setting in another parameter of, well, maybe I didn't want that going out. You know, it's just, I don't know if the OB is the solution.
well, I think part of the reason we also discussed the NR instead of the OV was because there's a lot of confusion about I-types among a lot of the libraries. And if suddenly, you know, they're all using OV10, and now they've got a handful of items that are OV5, or whatever OV code I give it, then they come up and they call the help desk and they say, why isn't my item doing what it's supposed to be doing? And you have to explain to them, because you didn't do this report, or you didn't understand how I-types work, and you have to kind of start from scratch.
Are you not going to have the same issue when their patrons can't request the NR type?
Most of the libraries aren't using a lot of NR. You know, maybe you're using 1 or 2 for a reference collection, but it'll be easier for us as staff to identify that this thing was part of this report instead of just a data entry error and no, somebody else wasn't changing your items. It was this report. I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense.
I would worry a little bit that, you know, NR really gets your attention. I would be afraid that this OV0 would just suddenly become a de facto new I-type, and things would just be left in it forever. And in some cases, staff would be under a lot of pressure to just extend the due date when it comes up for the 5 days, which was supposed to be the impetus to get your attention and say, fix this. So I would be a little worried that inertia would take over at a lot of places, and it would just suddenly, we'd have a portion of the collection just now in this new OV and nobody really understanding how that I-type came about. I mean, in our conversations, the NR, part of the advantage of that was that it would get libraries' attention. and compel them to fix these items, which was the original intention.
Yeah, I have to say I don't think the OB, I agree with you, Donovan. If they're not noticing, you know, that item the way it is, and they've cataloged it incorrectly to begin with, I don't think that OB, they're going to ever catch on to it. And then the people at the desk, you know, checking items out, they'll just go, oh, I don't understand why that's only 5 days. But they're not probably going to bring it to the attention of the cataloger, or they're just going to extend it. So I don't know if the OB is a good solution.
What date do you generally send this report out?
Beginning of the quarter, so January, April. So I'd have to check my calendar. Whatever the quarter is after April. Let's see.
July and October.
Just so I can tell the school librarians, what is your title of this when it comes through on the email? What is it?
Non-compliant local request. That's the title that has been for ever and ever. I just copy and paste somebody else wrote the text, right? We just copy and paste it.
Even use it.
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, a few, not too many.
Use what? LR codes. Yes, we do all the time.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, we all do. We get new books in. It's LR. It's not OB. Diane Tiger's the only one that does.
Send it out again on January or July 6th. Looks like the next date on my calendar for it.
Well, what other concerns, questions,
I was
ideas?
going to add, I don't know if you do this, I usually am pretty good about keeping up with that report and everything, but is there maybe mention the next time, like if you need to know your locations, I don't know if you already put that in there, like please email the help desk to know what I-types are currently valid for your location.
Yeah, I can make sure that information's in there. I do believe it's in the email.
It might be in the email, I guess. I just kind of, like, when I see it, I don't really read the email, to be perfectly honest. I just check the, I just scroll, look if I'm on.
Right, you know what it is.
Ooh, I'm not, right. Darn, I am. And,
We need to review who these emails are going to. Is it to maybe to the point where some libraries, they're not going to the right people even?
Well, it's going to automation contacts, who are supposed to be the people at the libraries that handle these things.
And we do renew the automation contract once a year. So you're right, someone could change within that year, but generally speaking, some of those automation contacts have been the same for many, many, many years.
So we aren't talking about a lot of items, you know, probably under 1,000, but they do tend to be the newer, more popular items because of the use of how LR is. So I don't.
Is there any further debate? If not, then I would entertain a motion to accept the local request cleanup as outlined, if someone would like to make that motion. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
You've heard the motion and the second. Again, the question is on the adoption of the motion to accept the local request cleanup document as outlined. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Move on to the SELCO report. Cheryl and Tyler.
Can you talk about it? Should I go first or should I, Cheryl?
Go ahead. Do you have that? I was just going to use the same slides from user group.
Oh, I was just going to talk from my notes.
Okay, go ahead. You start.
Well, for those of you who did attend Technology Users Group, that only last week, there probably be a fair amount of overlap between this and that one. But Cheryl and I went to Kasugi at the end of March, beginning of April. That is the Customers of Cersei Dynamics User Group Incorporated conference, which is held annually, rotates around. Apparently from now on, when it's going to be on the West Coast, it's going to be in Salt Lake City. So no more. Yeah. But went to several sessions. Cheryl mostly stuck with hardcore Horizon ones, while I went with the Enterprise ones or other random ones, which I just felt like going to because I knew she was going to cover the Horizon ones pretty well. One of the first ones I went to was the Enterprise sharing session. This one was basically the Thursday employees talking about what they want to do and then asking for input from it, which is kind of like the SPPU, which Cheryl and I sit on, although that one's focused on specifically Horizon users. One of the things I was interested to hear they're talking about is they are investigating responsive CSS for Enterprise, which is something I have dabbled at doing on my own, but I know it's going to be several months worth of work for me to actually get something workable for that. Unfortunately, they didn't give us a timeline for when that was going to be coming out, but still something to hope for. I brought up the whole search relevancy ranking in Enterprise and how it kind of sucks a bit when it comes to certain things, like how popular books should be closer to the top and newer things should be closer to the top. And they basically admitted that, yeah, it could use some work, but they're going to hold off on it until they move Enterprise all the way over into the Blue Cloud, which is their big push right now, because they don't want to force people to redo their work once it does actually move over to the Blue Cloud. I also went to one on putting a new face in your Enterprise format facet, which is something I still might do. But for the most part, it's not something I'm particularly interested in on its own, but it did give me several clues on how to do other things. If you went to users group, you saw that I have been able to come up with facets that refine the search to look at fiction versus nonfiction, or ones that look at the audience level, adults, juvenile, young adults. I was able to do that based off of code that I gleaned from this session. Very thankful to Rosemary for presenting that to me. I mean, I could have figured it out, but with her there, it was like, okay, now I know how this works. I did present a session on my own on customizing Enterprise using JavaScript and CSS. I think it went pretty well. I don't know.
I heard from multiple people you did a good job.
Excellent.
Did you make you take a vote?
What?
Did you make you take a vote?
I actually asked them for the survey responses for my session. They haven't gotten back to me, but I want to know what people said about it on the survey.
May not want to know.
I want to know even if it's bad, honestly.
Or not.
One of the things that I'm sure Don will talk about with the Thursday Giants roadmap was they had a session on upcoming upgrades for Enterprise. One of the things they did talk about is apparently the Forgot My PIN feature is bugged right now for Horizon Library. It's good because I spent 2 days bashing my head against my desk trying to figure out why it wasn't working. And that's going to be fixed in the upcoming upgrade, the 4.5. And they're also going to include Horizon blocks and the possibility for search history and other patron-submitted data in this upgrade. That is controlled by us on what actually is presented in the catalog. Community funded services, I talked about one of them already. The second one, talked to Amy about it afterwards. We're not really interested in it because basically it's taking a step backwards to Envisionware. We don't want to do that. The third one, which was interesting, one that I had seen the name of, I didn't realize what it was until I attended, was the I Love My Library prepaid debit cards program that Cersei Dynasty is exploring. Basically, this is a printed library card, which, as it is presented to you, it is just a library card, but the patron can choose to activate it as a prepaid debit card, at which point it's underwritten by Visa, and Visa will send them a new copy of the library card.
Well,
Funny.
I think we're giving money to everybody but us.
Actually, though, there's some logic behind this. I read the materials. I was not at the conference, but I read the materials about this. And they're looking at communities, frequently inner city, but not always, where there's just not a lot of people out there with credit cards. And we're trying to make using the library as convenient as possible, which includes online payment for some things. This is a way to do that and get the library kind of in the game, and potentially even spare some of those folks from some of the more predatory options that are out there. So there's something to it. It's not quite as cynical as maybe it sounds on first blush.
We use cash. I used to work for
Cash? Who cares cash?
I can't, apparently no one.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to
I don't
get
even,
cash.
You get, you also get double points if you use that card with the buy it now feature and the catalog.
Do we get commissions for this? I think we did.
A small percentage does go to the library.
God.
So it's like a target.
Well, I guess my other question.
Except it's a prepaid debit card, not a Visa.
I guess my other question is, are we
Right.
encouraged?
Come out of your checking account, so it's the same premise, it's a debit. It's
Right.
that you're
True.
Right, it's a prepaid card. Yep.
But in addition to debit, this is prepaid, so they cannot overspend it. There are ways that
But
they
are
had
we
it set
offering
up that
them
way.
an opportunity to be like,
Sorry?
are we offering them an opportunity, you don't have to turn in because you got, yeah, you can have a debit card and.
You can be overdue.
Pretty much.
Charge their fines and fees to the card.
They have to do it.
Right.
Yeah, they would still handle it.
All right.
There is a monthly fee attached to it,
Please
but
note, he
even
is
that can't be
not
direct.
recommending that we investigate this. He's just giving you a report.
I like this, but I know that one's not going to get by this committee.
I think too many commercial enterprises in one session won't work.
I also did go to one on basic Horizon system admin, which was totally over my head, so thank God Cheryl's around. And there was another one which Cheryl and I did have to share because of the 8 sessions, 7 of them were Symphony and only 1 was Horizon during it.
Oh.
So we all had to go to that one. And that was basically our using the bells and whistles of Horizon, which are basically things that I think one of them was new to me. Cheryl knew all the rest of them already.
Yay, Cheryl.
And I did go to a session on, and Cheryl and I talked to our sales rep about the Platinum Service Package, which is offered by Cersei Dynix. Actually, Donovan, do you want to give a brief summary of what that is?
Yeah.
Say my name.
Say that again, because I was thinking about something else.
The Platinum Service Package?
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about these debit cards. No, seriously, I really was. It really was.
Finally get platinum to give you access to Cersei Dynix staff and products, and they bundle things.
Right.
So certain things like we have to pay $3,000 right now to do an upgrade after hours, because I think it's dumb that they won't schedule an upgrade after their business time at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
So when you buy platinum services, you're getting just like an upgrade first class on an airplane. You're getting a bunch of services that you would normally be paying for individually. The advantage is that if you're using more than $14,000 of these add-on services a year, you would save money by paying platinum services at $14,000. If you're not using $14,000 worth of add-on services, then you've paid for more than you are buying. But we never know how many upgrades we're going to do.
Right.
So if we do 4 upgrades in a year, which does potential once a quarter, we will have, at $3,000 or $4,000 a year, we may have saved ourselves money.
And there are more than upgrades just included in this. There is some consulting work that Cersei Dynix will throw in for it for custom SQL scripts. There are certain enterprise sessions we can go to for them to help us fix issues that may come up. And I feel like there's more, but I can't think of it. Classes.
A lot of billable services.
I guess what average are we spending every year?
I don't think it was 14,000. I thought the quote was a lot less.
It was a lot less than that.
5.
Yeah.
But I was
All right,
About
so
right.
the last time I talked to them,
Well,
they didn't thank you on the debit card and the Amazon
there are multiple levels of platinum services. The one that we put into the budget request was the lower level because the ILS team felt that would be adequate for our needs.
Yeah, and we do pay like $3,000.
I was going to say, what's our normal, what normally do we spend or send them every year?
It varies, but it's in the neighborhood of $3,000 every time we do an upgrade in the evening.
Total is like almost $200,000 a year.
I was going to say so, but that doesn't count with the platinum services.
Right.
No.
These are billable things that are on top of the normal support fees.
So what are SELCO's thoughts about the platinum service?
Yeah,
I think they'd be useful.
I think
the
it's really
platinum services at the lower amount that the staff recommended, not what I'm remembering. I think it was in, what happened was is Amy put the budget together with everybody's request in it, and then,
2016 one.
yes,
Okay.
and we were $85,000 over budget.
well, then maybe this is a good time.
So
Well, actually, no, because in an average year, just the upgrades that we do on evenings and weekends will pay for these platinum services. So I strongly believe it's a good idea because we've made a commitment not to do upgrades during business hours. And, some years we have 2 upgrades, some years we have 4. So it's going to vary from time to time, but it's only going to take 2 or 3 of those, and
And they guarantee
Got
that this is part of the platinum.
it is.
yeah.
It is.
So where I was going with that is that I started pulling things out of the budget that had been asked for because Amy and I need to get, for the board, I needed to get it to 0 as far as
The budget.
the budget.
Yeah.
I don't remember if platinum services at 5,000 stayed in or not. I think it
I was under the
did.
impression it did.
I think it did because we were looking at the $5,000 one-time expenditure of once per year, not once ever, once per year as cheaper than paying for the upgrades, because that would be, at the point where we do 2 upgrades, we've already saved $1,000.
So I have an ignorant question. The upgrade, the cost, the $3,000 is not a Horizon cost, it's a staff cost to do it?
Yep.
No,
Well,
it's a Dynex cost. It's not our staff.
We're paying
Staff
them
cost.
to do
The upgrade itself is free, but we have to pay their staff time to do it off hours.
Your staff has to be here.
Well, we have to be here anyway, yeah.
Okay.
We do that for free for you.
Yeah, I know
you
my
don't.
Saturday.
So what happens is that if you want to do the upgrade in the middle of the business day, Cersei Dynex now requires that the upgrades be performed by them. So then if you want to do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when everyone's coming into the library or you're trying to close up your library, then that's fine. They'll do it for nothing. If you want it at 9 o'clock at night or on a Saturday or on a holiday, then you have to pay them $3,000 because then they bring in their staff.
And I remember we have discussed this years and years and years, and it's always been, we paid the money.
Yep.
Because it's just,
Right.
it's the disruptions that it would cause, it would just be too great.
Right, we made that
To
commitment.
me, we're going to pay the money anyway, and perhaps if we paid the money, maybe we can get a bargain even if we get a bargain every other year.
So does the platinum contract renew on our fiscal year, or is that one of those things where you got to do all the guessing between whatever you're doing between their fiscal year and our fiscal year?
They coincided with the general contract for their own sanity. So when you buy a service from Cersei Dynex, they time it to
Their contract.
our contract here with them. So everything's due at once. So that's just Tyler telling you that platinum looks good at Kosugi. The staff asked for it in the budget, and I think I left it in there, but I don't remember, and I don't have the budget in front of me.
I was under the pretty strong impression you did, but we also know that we're not to the end game.
Well, yeah, we have no money right now, folks. The governor vetoed the budget. I mean, we have zip, nada, nothing.